great to speak with you today
Thank
the
you.
new season of Special Forces. Tell me, what did you think when you got approached about being on the show?
It wasn't merely a court hearing. It wasn't just another day in the slow collapse of the Brown Empire. It was an explosion. One that had been forming in silence, in secrecy, behind the carefully polished veneers of reality television. For years, cameras captured smiles, staged dinners, and family meetings dressed up as harmony. But beneath the glossy facade of sister wives lay fault lines, cracks so deep they threatened to shatter everything. And when it finally detonated, it didn't just fracture the image of Kody and Robyn Brown. It obliterated it. The courthouse, usually a place of procedural monotony and dusty files, became the epicenter of a cultural earthquake. The nation turned its eyes toward a single building where the truth, long hidden, long buried, was about to surface. Outside, a storm brewed. Reporters waited behind barricades, their cameras trained like weapons on the heavy wooden doors. News vans lined the streets, antennae stretching skyward. Headlines were already being written before a single word was spoken inside. Brown family reckoning. Reality TV empire on trial. The courtroom showdown that could end it all. Inside, the air was different. Electric. Hushed whispers ricocheted off marble walls and high ceilings, echoing like a gathering storm. Lawyers shuffled papers, their eyes betraying nervous anticipation. Spectators clutched their phones tightly, their thumbs hovering over social media apps, ready to broadcast history in real time. Everyone had heard the rumors. Everyone had speculated. But now, at long last, the speculation was over. This was happening. Kody Brown, once the proud patriarch of the sprawling polygamous clan, and Robyn Brown, once heralded as his soulmate, were not walking into this courtroom to film another TLC scene. This was no storyline. This was no confessional. This was war. A war over money. A war over betrayal. A war over truth. And as the world watched, it was clear. This wasn't just about a family anymore. It was about the collapse of an empire built on a lie. The arrival at exactly 8:59 a.m. The silence outside broke. A black SUV rolled slowly to the curb, flanked by security and trailed by eager cameras. The back door swung open, not with confidence but with hesitation, as if even the car itself resisted releasing the man inside. Kody Brown emerged first. Gone were the casual cowboy boots and denim that fans had come to associate with him. Today he was clad in a dark gray suit, stiff, sharp, and utterly alien on his frame. His jaw was locked so tightly that a vein pulsed visibly at his temple. His squinted eyes scanned the crowd, not with warmth, not with recognition, but with calculation. There was no wave. No smile. No trace of the charming, charismatic man once capable of convincing 4 women to build a life with him. This was not the Kody Brown of Sister Wives. This was a man cornered. And behind him, like a shadow, came Robyn. Draped in a navy blue dress, her face was unreadable, carved in stone. The woman who once cried easily and often, who leaned into Kody's embrace for comfort, showed none of it today. No hand-holding. No reassuring glance. Just silence and distance. Their body language screamed louder than any headline. Whatever unity once existed was gone. The questions fired instantly. Kody, did you steal money from the other wives? Robyn, are you facing criminal charges? Will your kids testify today? Neither answered. But the silence was more deafening than words ever could have been. The beginning of the end. What had led to this? The courtroom wasn't just filled with lawyers and journalists. It was filled with ghosts. The ghosts of promises broken, of trust shattered, of love corrupted by greed. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Fans noticed first. The Sister Wives community, sharp-eyed and unrelenting, picked up on subtle signs. Christine's cryptic posts about betrayal. Janelle's hints about financial dishonesty. Even Mary's vague acknowledgments of being shut out. But the words that struck hardest came from Christine. Sometimes the truth hurts most when it comes from those you once trusted the most. That line wasn't random. It wasn't vague. It was a warning. And as whispers swirled, insiders began to leak stories of financial secrecy. Family cash, meant for everyone, being funneled into accounts that only Kody and Robyn could access. Household management, they called it. Emergency savings. But when Christine left, when Janelle began speaking up, The puzzle pieces snapped into place. This wasn't management. This wasn't savings. This was hoarding. This was betrayal. This was fraud. The courtroom was not large, but every seat was occupied. Wooden pews groaned under the weight of reporters, fans, and curious bystanders. Every eye was trained on the front where Kody and Robyn sat beside their attorneys, cold, aloof, projecting confidence they didn't feel. Their lawyer began with venom. "This is nothing more than a smear campaign," he declared. A desperate attempt by bitter ex-partners seeking revenge. But no words could cut through the tension. Because the prosecution was ready. And when they dropped their first bombshell, the courtroom gasped as one. Financial record. A wire transfer. $200,000. From the shared Brown family fund, meant for children, for groceries, for household needs, straight into an account labeled, Robyn Home Purchase. The room erupted in whispers. Reporters scrambled to type. Some spectators gasped audibly, covering their mouths with their hands. And that was only the beginning. Document after document. Transaction after transaction. A chilling paper trail. Depositions. Signatures that Christine and Janelle swore they never gave. Family credit cards drained. Purchases charged to accounts without consent. The judge, silent until now, leaned forward. His voice cut like a blade. If half of this is true, this is not miscommunication. This is fraud. And with those words, the carefully curated image of Kody and Robyn Brown began to unravel, line by line, dollar by dollar. The clip that changed everything, but then came the moment that stripped away every last illusion. The prosecution played a video. A clip never aired. Footage filmed for sister wives but left on the cutting room floor. Kody's voice filled the room. "I didn't think I needed their permission to protect what matters. Robyn and I are doing what's best for this family." Then the screen shifted. Janelle appeared, her eyes glassy, her voice breaking. He stopped caring about this family the moment it stopped being about Robyn. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about intent. About motive. About betrayal so deep it split a family in two. And as that silence stretched, thick and unbearable, it became clear. This wasn't a scandal. This was a reckoning. The wives break their silence. The courtroom wasn't just heavy with silence. It was suffocating. The video clip of Kody's unapologetic words still lingered in the air, and the image of Janelle whispering her truth replayed in everyone's mind. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens scratching like daggers against paper. Spectators whispered in disbelief, their voices rising and falling like waves on a stormy sea. And in the front row, 3 women sat. Christine, Janelle, Mary. No longer wives in the legal sense. No longer wives in Kody's heart. But forever tethered to him by years of sacrifice, betrayal, and shared pain. Today, though, they weren't background characters. Today they were the truth. Christine takes the stand. When Christine's name was called, the room shifted. She rose slowly, wearing a pale blouse, her hair pulled back in quiet defiance. She walked past Kody without a glance, without acknowledgement, without hesitation. The woman who had once bent over backwards to keep the family whole no longer carried his weight on her shoulders. She carried only the truth. Taking her place at the witness stand, Christine adjusted the microphone. For a long moment she didn't speak. She just looked out, at the judge, at the rows of strangers, and finally, briefly, at Janelle and Mary. Her voice, when it came, trembled but did not break. "I gave everything to that family. Every check from TLC, every hour of my time, every dream I had, I gave it to us. But what I didn't know was that the us was a lie." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Christine continued, her voice growing stronger. "For years we believed the money was pooled. That what we built together. But while we were buying groceries in bulk and second-hand shoes for the kids, while Janelle and I were stretching every dollar for school supplies and bills, Robyn and Kody were hiding money in accounts we never even knew existed. Money meant for all of us." She paused. Her hands gripped the wood of the stand so tightly that her knuckles whitened. "Do you know what it feels like?" she asked, her voice cracking. "To find out that the people you trusted most had been betraying you for years? That every sacrifice, every moment you thought you were building a future, was being used to line someone else's pockets?" Her eyes burned. "I walked away from Kody. But I didn't walk away from the truth. I'm here because the truth deserves to be heard. The courtroom sat frozen, hanging on every word. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowing, but he did not interrupt. For once,
Tense.
Yeah, I got excited. It was like, it felt like a purpose in a way. I needed
he had no words. Janelle's strength, then it was Janelle's turn. If Christine's testimony was fire, Janelle's was steel. She strode to the stand with the calm composure of someone who had fought too many battles to tremble at this one. Her voice was even, deliberate, cutting in its precision. I managed the books for years, she began. I know where the money came from and I know where it should have gone. But at some point I stopped being given access. Kody told me he and Robyn would handle the accounts, that I should focus on the kids instead. She paused, eyes flicking toward Kody. And I believed him. Because I wanted to believe him. But then I started seeing purchases I never approved. Transactions I couldn't trace. Christine asked questions. Mary asked questions. And every time we were told to trust. But trust without transparency isn't trust. It's control. Her voice hardened. I found records of tuition payments for private schools. Trips. Jury. Homes. All paid from accounts tied to the family fund. And when I confronted Kody, he told me it was his right as head of the family to decide where money went. He said we didn't need to know. He said Robyn and her kids came first. Gasps filled the room again. Janelle's jaw tightened. I buried a son last year. Garrison. Do you know what it feels like to stand over your child's grave and wonder if the man who calls himself his father ever truly cared for him the way he cared for someone else's children? To wonder if the money that could have gone to support all of us, to ease burdens, to provide futures, was instead funneled away to build a kingdom for just two people? The words hung like knives in the air. Even the judge shifted uncomfortably, his brow furrowing. For the first time all day Robyn lowered her head. Mary's silence, and then there was Mary. Called to the stand, she walked slowly, her hands clasped tightly, her expression unreadable. Unlike Christine's fire or Janelle's steel, Mary brought something else. Something heavier. Silence. When she sat at the witness stand, the courtroom braced itself. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras clicked. Everyone waited for her words. But Mary did not launch into accusations. She did not unravel documents or recount transactions. She spoke quietly. Simply. 4 years I waited for Kody to choose me. To see me. To love me. And when he didn't, I told myself I still had the family. That the family mattered more than me. But then, I realized even the family wasn't real anymore. Because family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't take from each other while calling it love. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. I stayed silent because I thought my silence was loyalty. But silence in the face of betrayal isn't loyalty. It's surrender. And I won't surrender anymore. A single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. The room was silent. So silent that when Kody shifted in his seat, the sound of the chair creaking echoed like thunder. The weight of the truth. By the time all three women had spoken, the courtroom no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like a funeral. The funeral of an empire. The prosecution laid the evidence bare. Bank statements, wire transfers, property deeds, LLC filings. But it wasn't the numbers that carried the most weight. It was the voices of the women. The wives who had once defended Kody, once stood beside him, now standing in opposition, united in truth if nothing else. Kody sat rigid, his eyes darting between the judge, the documents, and the women who had once loved him. His face was a storm, anger, fear, disbelief, and something else. Something that looked almost like regret. And beside him, Robyn sat pale and motionless, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles glowed white. 4 years she had been painted as the favorite, the one Kody cherished above all others. Now she was painted as something else entirely. The architect of betrayal, the face of manipulation, the co-conspirator in a fraud that could topple not just a marriage but an empire. The world reacts, and outside those walls the world was already ablaze. On Twitter, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Kody exposed, hashtag Robyn on trial, hashtag sisterwives fraud. On TikTok, creators dissected every detail, pausing Christine's words, replaying Janelle's accusations, analyzing Mary's silence. On YouTube, commentators broadcast live reactions. Robyn's finished. Kody's empire is collapsing. This is the day sister wives died. Even former TLC personalities chimed in, calling it the biggest betrayal in reality TV history. By the time court adjourned for the day, the headlines were already spreading across every platform, every screen. But inside, one truth was clear. This was not just a case. This was a reckoning. The breaking point, the silence in the courtroom, was deceptive, thin, fragile, and dangerous, like glass stretched to its breaking point. One more word, one more revelation, and it would shatter into 1,000 jagged pieces. At the center of it all sat Robyn Brown. The woman once painted as the quiet victim of a collapsing family now looked cornered, her eyes darting from the judge to the lawyers to the faces of Christine, Janelle, and Mary, each one carrying a weight of history, betrayal, and truth that no courtroom could ever fully contain. When the attorney asked her the next question, the oxygen seemed to vanish from the room. "Mrs. Brown, did you or did you not authorize transactions under shell companies tied to family assets, without the full knowledge or consent of the other wives?" For the briefest moment, Robyn froze. Her lips parted, then closed again. She gripped the edge of the witness stand so tightly her knuckles turned white. The audience leaned forward. Christine whispered something to Janelle, who shook her head slowly, her jaw clenched. Mary didn't move at all. Robyn's answer came in fragments, each word breaking under its own weight. I did what I was told was necessary. Kody said it was for the future. For us. For the family's survival. The courtroom reacted like a thunderclap. Reporters' pens scratched furiously against their pads. A murmur swept through the gallery like a wave, heavy and unstoppable. Kody's face twisted, red with fury. He leaned forward, nearly leaping from his seat. "That's not true. Don't twist this, Robyn. You were in on it. You knew exactly what we were doing." The judge's gavel slammed down like lightning, splitting the air. "Mr. Brown, you will remain silent." But the damage was done. The image Kody had clung to, that of the composed patriarch, the man in control, crumbled in front of everyone. His voice had cracked with desperation, his mask slipping away for the world to see. Robyn looked at him with something raw, something unguarded, fear, maybe even betrayal. For the first time, her tears didn't look like manipulation. They looked like panic. The attorney seized the moment. "So you admit, Mrs. Brown, that you and Mr. Brown jointly conducted these transfers? That you were not the passive participant you've portrayed yourself to be?" Her voice broke. "I didn't want to lose him. I thought if I helped, if I showed him I was loyal, he wouldn't leave me like he left them." The words landed like daggers in Christine's chest. Janelle's lips trembled, her hands gripping the armrests. Mary, quiet, still, invisible for so many years, finally moved. She leaned forward, her eyes piercing straight into Robyn's. And for the first time in public, Mary's voice carried across the courtroom. "He left us long before he left you. You just refused to see it." The gallery gasped. Even Christine's hand flew to her mouth, shocked at the sound of Mary's voice cutting through the chaos. Robyn sobbed openly now, mascara streaking down her face. Kody shook his head violently, muttering curses under his breath. He looked less like a husband, less like a leader, and more like a man cornered by the wreckage of his own making. The judge called for order again, but no gavel could erase what had been unleashed. The wives' truths had finally broken through, raw and undeniable. In the hallway outside, cameras flashed, journalists shouted, and social media buzzed like a hive ready to explode. Inside, the trial was no longer about land, money, or contracts. It had become something bigger, something deeper. It was about betrayal, silence, and survival. And for the first time, the balance of power had shifted. Kody and Robyn were no longer untouchable. They were exposed. The hidden empire had started quietly, or at least as quietly as life in the Brown household could ever be. On the outside, the world saw a family built on love, faith, and the reality TV dream that had made Sister Wives a household name. A man with 4 wives, a brood of children, and the delicate choreography of plural marriage played out in weekly episodes. But behind closed doors, a storm had been gathering for years, and its name was Robyn Brown. By 2019, whispers had become rumors, rumors had become suspicion, and suspicion was about to explode into full-blown courtroom drama. Robyn Brown, the youngest of the Brown wives and the one often portrayed on screen as soft-spoken, nurturing, and selfless, was accused of a financial deception that stunned not just her fellow wives but also the public. A $900,000 Flagstaff residence, a house that had been purchased while she repeatedly insisted the family was broke, became the lightning rod for accusations that had been simmering for years. The house itself was listed in only Robyn and Kody's names. No trace of contribution from Janelle, Christine, or Mary appeared on the deed. Financial audits conducted by independent firms revealed even more shocking truths. Robyn had created not one but two LLCs, Brown Family Holdings and Life with Robyn Incorporated, naming herself as sole manager. These entities had received over $420,000 in consulting and family management payments, ostensibly reimbursed from TLC production funds. But it didn't stop there. Investigators noted credit card abuse, with Robyn using joint family accounts for luxury expenses entirely unrelated to family needs. Designer furniture sets, $3,600 handbags, tuition for her children at a private school from a previous marriage. These were just the tip of the iceberg. Worse, documents emerged that allegedly bore Christine's signature, giving Robyn permission to control certain funds. But Christine herself testified under oath that she never signed these forms, and a forensic handwriting examiner confirmed the signature was inconsistent with her genuine handwriting. Part 2. Emotional manipulation and the power of control. The courtroom became a theater of betrayal. The wives testified with quiet fury, recounting how Robyn had persuaded them she was acting in everyone's best interest. At the start of the COVID crisis, she had requested temporary power of attorney over family finances, a move presented as necessary, even heroic. But the temporary authority allegedly became permanent, unknown to the others, leaving her with near total control over family wealth. Video depositions captured Christine speaking directly to the camera, her words precise, sharp, and full of pain. "I trusted Robyn. I wanted to think she had all of our best interests in mind. But slowly, bit by bit, I saw everything unravel. She alienated Kody from us. She instilled division in the guise of unity." Janelle's testimony carried the weight of years of quiet observation. "There were accounts at the bank I never even knew we had. She said we were broke, but she had money going where we weren't even permitted to question." This was no longer a case of simple mismanagement. The narrative was clear. Financial manipulation had been weaponized to consolidate power, isolating the other wives and giving Robyn and Kody autonomy at the cost of familial trust. Robyn herself presented a very different face. Gone was the tearful, vulnerable figure TV audiences had grown accustomed to. In court she was calm, measured, even cold. She spoke little, whispered only to her attorney, avoiding eye contact with the judge and former sister wives. Legal analysts called it strategic silence, recognizing the careful, deliberate choice to avoid any emotional vulnerability that might be used against her. Part 3. The forensic accountant's bombshell. The prosecution called a forensic accountant to testify, and the courtroom leaned forward collectively as she detailed a step-by-step timeline of transactions that painted a damning portrait of Robyn and Kody's financial behavior. July 2019. Christine's daughter required funds for surgery. Family resources were declared tight. Meanwhile, $48,000 was spent on personal home improvements for Robyn's Flagstaff residence. November 2020. Mary inquired about accessing business profits for a new online venture. She was told the account had been closed, yet weeks prior, $75,000 had been funneled into Life with Robyn Incorporated. Early 2021. Kody allegedly proposed selling Janelle's recreational vehicle for family money. Around the same time, he and Robyn spent $60,000 renovating their backyard, adding a hot tub and outdoor fireplace. The accountant's words struck like hammers. "This isn't mismanagement. This is strategic redirection of funds to benefit one couple at the expense of the rest." The emotional weight hit hardest when adult children submitted written statements. One child wrote, "We didn't know there was so much division. We thought the money was for all of us. I worked 2 jobs thinking the family couldn't afford college help. Turns out it was just us who couldn't." Another child said, "I was instructed not to question. I was instructed it was all being taken care of. I feel as though I never knew the whole truth." It became painfully evident. The betrayal extended beyond the wives. Children, many of whom had assumed they were suffering alongside the rest of the family, had in fact been shielded or prioritized, leaving others to unknowingly endure hardship. Part 4. Public outrage and social media frenzy as news of the courtroom revelations leaked to social media. Public opinion shifted dramatically. TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube exploded with commentary. Users dissected every past episode of Sister Wives, searching for subtle cues in Robyn's behavior, body language, and interactions with Kody. Memes circulated. Reddit threads such as one titled Robyn Brown, the mastermind, garnered tens of thousands of upvotes within hours. Robyn built a kingdom while pretending she was just surviving. She cried on screen while collecting everyone's money off screen. That's next-level manipulation. If Kody let her take over like this, maybe he wanted it that way. Attorneys on both sides watched the media reaction cautiously, aware that while no criminal charges had yet been filed, financial restitution was within the court's power. Experts speculated that Robyn and Kody might be forced to reimburse hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the Flagstaff residence could potentially be sold. Legal counsel requested an injunction to prevent further asset transfers, effectively freezing Robyn's control over finances until the court reached a verdict. The illusion of trust in a family that had been under the public microscope for more than a decade. Appearances were everything. 4 wives, 18 children, and a life broadcast on national television had created a careful choreography of emotion, loyalty, and performance. But behind the cameras, the carefully curated image of unity and love was beginning to crack. Robyn Brown, youngest of the sister wives and often portrayed as the gentle, soft-spoken matriarch, was suddenly at the center of an explosive financial scandal. In 2019, she purchased a $900,000 residence in Flagstaff, an acquisition made while repeatedly telling the other wives the family was broke. The property, listed solely in Robyn and Kody's names, raised eyebrows and suspicions. Independent financial audits revealed the shocking truth. Robyn had created 2 LLCs, Brown Family Holdings and Life with Robyn Incorporated, naming herself the sole manager. Together, these entities had received over $420,000 from TLC production reimbursements. But the violations didn't stop there. Investigators discovered credit card abuse, with Robyn charging luxury furniture, $3,600 designer handbags, and private school tuition for her children from a previous marriage, all from joint family accounts. The emotional fallout was profound. Documents emerged allegedly signed by Christine, granting Robyn control over funds. Christine vehemently denied ever signing them, and forensic analysis confirmed the signature was not hers. Part 2. Strategic silence and emotional manipulation. Courtroom testimony painted a picture of manipulation and betrayal. The wives testified that Robyn had persuaded them she was acting in everyone's best interest, requesting temporary power of attorney over finances during the COVID crisis. But according to multiple statements, the temporary authority had effectively become permanent, unbeknownst to them. Christine's deposition, recorded before the trial, was a study in controlled fury. I trusted Robyn. I wanted to believe she had our best interests in mind. But slowly, bit by bit, everything unraveled. She alienated Kody from us. She instilled division in the guise of unity. Janelle's testimony added quiet rage. There were accounts I never even knew we had. She said we were broke, but she had money going where we weren't allowed to question. This wasn't merely financial mismanagement. It was a deliberate consolidation of power, leaving Robyn and Kody autonomous while the other wives were kept in the dark. Robyn, once the on-screen emotional mother, appeared calm and distant in court. Avoiding eye contact with the judge and former sister wives, she whispered only to her attorney. Legal analysts called this strategic silence, recognizing a calculated decision to avoid any emotional vulnerability that might harm her case. Part 3. The forensic accountant drops the hammer. Then came the forensic accountant. The courtroom held its collective breath as she detailed a timeline of suspicious financial transactions. July 2019. Christine's daughter needed money for surgery. The family claimed funds were tight. Simultaneously, $48,000 was spent on Robyn's home improvements. November 2020. Mary requested access to business profits for a new venture. The account was reportedly closed, though $75,000 had been transferred weeks earlier to Life with Robyn Incorporated. Early 2021. Kody proposed selling Janelle's RV for family funds while he and Robyn spent $60,000 renovating their backyard with a hot tub and fireplace. The accountant concluded, "This isn't mismanagement. It's strategic redirection of funds to benefit one couple at the expense of the others." The emotional impact was devastating. Adult children submitted statements detailing their confusion and heartbreak. "I worked 2 jobs thinking the family couldn't afford college help. Turns out it was just us who couldn't. I was told not to question. I feel as though I never knew the whole truth." The betrayal extended beyond finances, affecting the children who had assumed they were all suffering together. Part 4. Public outrage and media frenzy. As news of the revelations spread, social media exploded. TikTokers, Redditors, X-users, and YouTube creators dissected every episode of Sister Wives, examining Robyn's body language, facial expressions, and interactions. The post titled "Robyn Brown, the Mastermind" reached 40,000 upvotes within 24 hours. Robyn built a kingdom while pretending she was just surviving. She cried on screen while collecting everyone's money off screen. That's next-level manipulation. Attorneys pointed out that while no criminal charges had been filed, financial restitution was on the table. Robyn and Kody could be compelled to repay hundreds of thousands, possibly forcing the sale of the Flagstaff residence. Injunctions were requested to prevent further asset transfers. Kody Brown, meanwhile, faced the court's scrutiny. Long portrayed as the patriarch maintaining order, he was visibly unraveling. When called to respond to the accusations, he rose and delivered an emotional tirade. "Your Honor, this isn't about fraud. It's about hurt feelings and revenge. I've given up my privacy, my tranquility, and my sanity for this family. And now I'm being dragged through the filth for trying to defend what little we had left." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. His lawyers tried to calm him, but the facade of control had crumbled. "You both know what this is really about," he said, pointing at Christine and Janelle. "You split. You quit on our family. Now you want to rewrite history and paint me as the villain for trying to keep things together." The courtroom silence was palpable. Here was a man previously commanding authority over a sprawling family, now exposed as vulnerable, panicked, and defensive. Part 5. Kody's defense and legal strategy. Once Kody's outburst subsided, his legal team presented a methodical defense. Miscommunication argument. No formal contracts were signed by all wives regarding financial management. Intent versus perception. Kody's actions were framed as attempts to stabilize the family amid crisis, not to enrich himself or Robyn. Robyn's role. Acknowledged but presented as routine management, not fraudulent scheming. No criminal intent. Transfers and accounts followed legal and tax advice. The defense emphasized that while mistakes occurred, there was no theft or malice. Despite these arguments, the courtroom had already seen the stark evidence. Emails, bank statements, and property deeds painted a picture of betrayal and mismanagement. Kody's authority was crumbling under scrutiny, and Robyn's silence only highlighted the tension. Part 6. Christine speaks. Truth and calmness. During a recess, Christine delivered a brief but piercing statement. "I'm not here to fight Kody. I'm here to speak the truth. We all voted years ago that our family funds would be divided equally. I believed that system. We followed it until one day, I was informed there wasn't enough to cover my children's school fees. And then I saw pictures of Robyn's new backyard makeover. If he had said things changed, I would have understood. But he didn't. He just took over quietly and counted on us to keep silent." Her words were concise, controlled, and devastating. They cut through Kody's emotional theatrics, laying bare the heartbreak of silent betrayal. Part 7. Robyn testifies. The next day, the court reconvened. Tensions were electric. Television vans lined the streets outside. Robyn Brown, once the unshakable favorite wife, took the stand. She had a choice: defend Kody, defend herself. The breaking point. The silence in the courtroom was deceptive, thin, fragile, and dangerous, like glass stretched to its breaking point. One more word, one more revelation, and it would shatter into 1,000 jagged pieces. At the center of it all sat Robyn Brown. The woman once painted as the quiet victim of a collapsing family now looked cornered, her eyes darting from the judge to the lawyers to the faces of Christine, Janelle, and Mary, each one carrying a weight of history, betrayal, and truth that no courtroom could ever fully contain. When the attorney asked her the next question, the oxygen seemed to vanish from the room. Mrs. Brown, did you or did you not authorize transactions under shell companies tied to family assets, without the full knowledge or consent of the other wives? For the briefest moment, Robyn froze. Her lips parted, then closed again. She gripped the edge of the witness stand so tightly her knuckles turned white. The audience leaned forward. Christine whispered something to Janelle, who shook her head slowly, her jaw clenched. Mary didn't move at all. Robyn's answer came in fragments, each word breaking under its own weight. I did what I was told was necessary. Kody said it was for the future. For us. For the family's survival. The courtroom reacted like a thunderclap. Reporters' pens scratched furiously against their pads. A murmur swept through the gallery like a wave, heavy and unstoppable. Kody's face twisted red with fury. He leaned forward, nearly leaping from his seat. That's not true. Don't twist this, Robyn. You were in on it. You knew exactly what we were doing. The judge's gavel slammed down like lightning, splitting the air. Mr. Brown, you will remain silent. But the damage was done. The image Kody had clung to, that of the composed patriarch, the man in control, crumbled in front of everyone. His voice had cracked with desperation, his mask slipping away for the world to see. Robyn looked at him with something raw, something unguarded. Fear, maybe even betrayal. For the first time, her tears didn't look like manipulation. They looked like panic. The attorney seized the moment. So you admit, Mrs. Brown, that you and Mr. Brown jointly conducted these transfers? That you were not the passive participant you've portrayed yourself to be? Her voice broke. I didn't want to lose him. I thought if I helped, if I showed him I was loyal, he wouldn't leave me like he left them. The words landed like daggers in Christine's chest. Janelle's lips trembled, her hands gripping the armrests. Mary, quiet, still, invisible for so many years, finally moved. She leaned forward, her eyes piercing straight into Robyn's. And for the first time in public, Mary's voice carried across the courtroom. He left us long before he left you. You just refused to see it. The gallery gasped. Even Christine